how this was handled was abysmal. Oh my goodness. So I think we're all aware of the tragedy that took place in Nashville this week. And one thing I have to say is that it was crazy to watch how this tragedy was politicized within an instant. And what I mean by that, by politicized, I mean a story or a tragedy weaponized for the benefit of said political party or said political ideology. And that's what happened. When it comes to the right, Lord in heaven, they completely went cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, right? You had people trying to use this incident, Audrey Hale, as a representation of all of the trans community. They went so far as to say that, hey, trans people shouldn't be allowed to have firearms, okay? Because it's a mental disorder, you know, what they wanted to say, because they need to seek mental health. Then they went and looked up as far as Instagram pictures of people with trans shirts where it says trans rights or else. And it was like AR-15s in like blue, white, and pink, you know, the colors of the trans flag. And they try to use that as pretext to attempt to vilify all of trans people. When it comes to this issue and how the right handled it, it's insane to witness how short-sighted they are, okay? Because if you're gonna try and use this tragedy to malign all trans people, well, I don't think you're gonna like that standard, okay? I don't think you're gonna like that standard at all. Because if we look at, okay, the previous school incidents, they happen to be of one certain group, okay? I'm just letting you know. It happens to be of one certain group that is a vast majority represented when it comes to these school incidents. And it's white males. So if you want to use this trans individual as an example, well, that's not going to benefit you, okay? It's going to fall back into the attacks that were happening when people were saying, you're a white male and all of that. And then, of course, well, you know, that'll fall into the hands of Tucker Carlson, the right, and they get to say, well, this is an anti-white war and yada, yada, yada. And the cycle continues. When it comes to looking up Instagram posts or pictures of people with guns and using that as means to say, hey, they shouldn't have firearms, I don't even know where to begin. Last time I checked, I thought the right was against red flag laws. Huh? Right? Isn't that what you were against? Because if that's what you want to do, then you're tacitly advocating for red flag laws. Furthermore, this goes against everything that they've been talking about when it comes to the Second Amendment, right? If you want to say that trans people shouldn't have guns because you disagree with what they want to do with their bodies or whatnot, then that goes, what it does is it obliterates your position as far as the right's position, GOP, RNC, whatever you want to say, the right's position on guns. And that is 9 out of 10. What tends to happen in many cases like this is that they expose their hypocrisy. That's what they do. They're all about Second Amendment until something happens and they can attack someone else and completely forget about, well, you just said that everyone has a right to bear arms, regardless of, you know, black, white, or their orientation or whatever. Now, all of a sudden, now you're saying that trans people shouldn't have a right to bear arms? Now you're saying that this trans person who did this, you know, this horror, they're an example of everyone? I'm confused now. As much as the right loves to quote MLK, I find it funny when they put a pause on that, when there's a bigger narrative that they can push forward. When it comes to the left and how they handle this situation, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, bruh. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. I find it hysterical. As much as the left wants to talk about the pronouns game and dead naming and all this stuff, that I have yet to see a left-wing outlet say that this person, he is the one that did this tragedy. I have yet to say it, okay? So I find it interesting. You know, the old joke goes that, you know, everyone believes in God during a plane crash, okay? Everyone, dear Lord, please don't let this plane crash. And it goes back to, right, in times of tragedy, it seems that, in fact, you do know the difference between a man and a woman. That's crazy to me. Who would have thunk, man? Who would have thunk? I saw a post saying, she did this, right? Or sometimes they wouldn't use pronouns. They say, hey, transgender person did this, or this person did, right? They'd be, you know, a little vague with it. In other cases, which is on the sure sign for cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, you would have people trying to highlight, hey, you're misgendering this person. And I'm like, yo, are you for real right now? Are you serious right now? Given what this person did, okay, at this school, you're really concerned with misgendering this person? Like, is that really the argument you want to present to everyone? And of course, anytime someone would ever try and make that argument, the right would eat them up. And very well, they should, okay? Once again, it just seems they're in it together. They're very much in it together. If you don't know this by now, I don't know what to tell you. The right puts out, they say asinine and ludicrous stuff for the left, and the left says asinine and ludicrous stuff for the right. It is a symbiotic relationship at this point. And who gets screwed in the meantime, between time? You and me. That's really what it is. Because unfortunately, there are swaths of simpletons, of ignorance on both sides. And it just muddies the water for any progress in discourse. That's what it does, unfortunately. Nevertheless, what was really interesting to witness when it came to the left was the pictures that they put out. Once again, this goes back to the whole issue when it comes to the trans. Because this person was a trans man. And what that means, for those who don't know, is a biological woman who identifies as a man, as a boy. So they were putting out pictures of her as a girl. And it's like, wait, I thought this was like a form of like doxing or something like that. Didn't we have this whole debacle when it came to, I forgot who it was, there've been a few people, where they put out like pictures before they transitioned? And people, the left was like upset about this. How did you do this? This is horrible. This is despicable. In some cases, they've actually wiped from the internet, if you go on certain browsers, before transition pictures, right? If they were transitioned to a girl, you can't look up any pictures of what they look like before they transition. And it's crazy. So I find it hysterical that they're putting out pictures of this girl, of this girl, even though she was a trans man. It's just irony, man. But to add the cherry on top of this is that they're putting out pictures of like her with glass. It's such a flattering picture. And I've never come across this. I've never come across this ever. Okay? Ever. I've never come across someone putting out a flattering picture of someone who just did an atrocity like this person did. Never. When it comes to victims, I've seen victims, right? Of police brutality and things like that. You want to put them in the best light, of course, because they're a victim. So it's kind of confusing that you put this out and then you put out a headline, hey, person does this at school, tragedy, yada, yada. Because it was like you're juxtaposing this picture with this headline. And it seemed a bit bipolar, schizophrenic with many of the articles that were doing this. It got to the point because of the outlandish backlash from the right, that then allowed the left to then talk about, hey, now all trans people are in fear for their life. Because if the right wants to label this as a representation of all trans people, that gives the left the ammunition they need to change the conversation. And that is being, hey, now we need to protect all trans people because now all of them are being labeled as terrorists or whatnot. Because that's what they try to say. It was trans terrorism, which is, I love how they come up with these terms when it comes to certain narratives, but all the white male shooters, you never hear white terrorism. You'll never hear the right say that. Of course not, because they have a base to protect. I think the issue boils down to is that, hey, how do we prevent this from happening? And it's a little ironic to hear the right say there's nothing we can do. Because that's what it sounds like. It sounds like the right say, anytime something like this happens, there's nothing we can do. Shall not be infringed, shall not be infringed. And I'm like, that's not the position they have on anything else. When it comes to drag queen shows, drag kid shows or stuff like that, they put out laws banning that or regulations stopping that. When it comes to CRT or what they believe is CRT or anything like that, similar to it, they put out laws banning that, stopping that, right, from happening in schools. When it comes to books that they don't like is like sex ed or something like that. Do they ever say, well, there's nothing we can do? No, they put out laws banning that, stopping that from happening. But in this one particular case, their hands are up in the air. Well, there's nothing we can do. And I think that's foolishness, okay? I think that's absolute foolishness. I think a lot of people are obsessed with this gun culture, this concept of the Second Amendment. And I've already addressed as far as many of the issues I have with many people who want to say, well, the Second Amendment had to do with the right to citizens, yada, yada, yada. Now, I understand that there are Supreme Court cases that back up that definition. But as we've seen before, when it comes to the Supreme Court is not, it's not God. Okay, the Supreme Court can make poor decisions. It can be right and wrong, especially depending on your perspective. When it comes to abortion, for example, well, we saw that they changed their mind when it came to abortion. So the same thing can happen when it comes to the Second Amendment. Because for all the people who want to say it's a right to citizen, well, when you think about well-regulated militia, if you go back to that time, it wouldn't include black people, it wouldn't include women, it wouldn't include the disabled, and it sure as heck wouldn't include any type of mental disabled. It wouldn't include obese people, because you're not having obese people on the battlefield fighting for your rights. That's not what's happening. So there are those 5 factors. If you really want to go back to what a well-regulated militia meant at that time, those will all be excluded. Well, it seems that they don't have a problem making exceptions, right, when it comes to the Second Amendment, for what it defines and what it excludes for those 5 groups. So if you're willing to make exceptions for that and stretch the definition of the Second Amendment, then we can, as far as put some barriers to the Second Amendment. One thing I always advise, as far as training, most of these people who have guns should not have guns. To say that everyone should have a gun, no. And I think that's where the training comes into play. You should have to mandatory pass some type of evaluation annually, okay, when it comes to having a firearm. There has to be some type of training test, just as we have for anything else. Motor vehicles, right? Pilots, whatever. We should have a training where we can know that this person knows how to use this gun in a proficient and effective and safe manner. Upon you passing that, great, you get to have a gun. If you don't, I'm sorry. There is a barrier to entry because you have not proven yourself to be competent in your Second Amendment right. You have not proven yourself to be included in that well-regulated militia. In addition to that, I don't have an issue with red flag laws to a certain extent. When it comes to friends and family putting in red flag laws, great. When it comes to law enforcement, hell to the no. Not in a million years, okay? And I think what would be a benefit to red flag laws is that there is extreme punishments for you putting in a false red flag law. If you put in just like if you put in a false police report, okay, that can result in fines or imprisonment. I think the same thing needs to be applied for that, so that you don't get people, jilted exes or upset family members or whatnot who are trying to retaliate or trying to harm you just to harm you. I think the main issue is that both groups are polarized, and it's hard to come to conclusions or to make negotiations or to even come to concessions when both groups see themselves as the devil. Anyways, guys, that's the video. Let me know what you guys think. Whether or not you believe, listen, there's nothing we can do, okay? There's nothing we can do. It's a mental health issue. That's what it is. Or if you don't believe, you know what? I find it interesting when it's a mental health issue and when it's not a mental health issue. I think something can be done besides a mental health issue. I think we can also address the mental health issue, okay? Because many of the people want to say it's a mental health issue. Well, when policies and regulations are brought up to increase the funding of mental health and certain social programs, well, the right ends up saying, oh, that's welfare, and you lift yourself up by the bootstraps. So you say one thing, but then you do another. And at the same time, in addition to mental health, I think we can also address some of the issues with this gun culture that we have. Isn't that what the right says all the time? Hey, we have a culture. Well, it seems that we have a culture that isn't conducive to children going to school safely. And that's problematic. Nevertheless, if you happen to disagree with this video, you're more than welcome to call in during disagreement days, which are typically held Friday through Sunday. There'll be a number on screen. You call in, we duke it out. Either or, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please feel free to like, share, comment, subscribe. Oh, that fun stuff. Till next time, guys. Be amazing. It seems that, in fact, you do know the difference between a man and a woman.